Good morning and welcome to the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce's webinar entitled Attracting and Retaining Top-Tier Talent in Cutting-Edge Finance. Thank you all for attending. I am John Welch, the Executive Director of the Brazilian American Chamber, and on behalf of the Chamber, we wish you all health and happiness in this lovely autumn.
But I think that the main challenge, or one of the key challenges that we've all faced, is kind of the world's been turned upside down, right, as a result of COVID. The consequences of that within financial services has meant for me, as the geography has kind of opened the borders in many ways. Location and insistence of having everything within proximity has diminished, which means that in many ways it's compounded, and certainly from what we see in our space is a significant kind of war for talent, right, which is linked very much to attracting, and I think later on there's questions associated with retention, which we can address through that. As a consequence of that, then most places now are challenged with open positions, right? How do you fill those? And I think that as a consequence of COVID and opening all of this up, it's also, places are starting to struggle with how do you actually attract the right people. And in my personal opinion, what I'm seeing, and you see it a lot, within Wall Street firms and stuff like that, people are starting to throw money at it, right? Do you start to offer, either retention bonuses, sign-on bonuses? Do you increase pay? So, frankly, within those boundaries, I just think some of those could, are kind of knee-jerk reactions, and doesn't necessarily mean you're going to attract the right talent, neither retain it in that market, because it can provoke, weird behaviors, right, that are money-driven. So I think that, within the world that we're in, with the huge focus on retaining and attracting talent in any service with such, scarcity of resources, all companies within financial services really need to take a hard look at, how they're really addressing this and how they're approaching it.
When we look at geographies, I think about COVID-19, because COVID-19 has been a catalyst for change. In 2018, we lost out on a $5 million investment because the VC said there is no way that you can have a distributed team. We had a distributed team since day one. And there are some people, I live in Silicon Valley, but there's some people on the East Coast that think I live with them because we're constantly on the phone, constantly on Zooms. We understand how to harness technology so that we are efficient. But what that does is it opens the aperture to have a global type of scale for talent. And so we have so many more folks that can come in and work with us. We like to hire happy, smart people that get shit done. And people are happier when they live where they want to live. And it also allows for people to move frequently. I see a lot of what I'm going to call nomadic type of talent, where they're going to go to Hawaii for a month, or they're going to go to Boulder for a month, or they're going to go to South America for a month, right? So it allows people to live their best life, and maybe they might be a little sleep deprived because they might be working when most people around them are sleeping, but it just allows for a different type of a recruitment effort.
Yeah, and Maryanne and Matt, those are right on the money. John, such a good question. So coming from a really strictly consulting and a services background for 24 years, so seeing the ebb and flow of what the services and consulting businesses look like, and serving our clients who are primarily financial services and fintech firms, I see a couple things that are happening. Number one, maybe most important, there's a lot more competition for the best and the brightest, no matter the geography, but for the best and the brightest who are coming up university ranks, who might be entering the job market for a couple years doing apprenticeships, and then maybe coming to financial services firms. And so that very legacy traditional model has been breaking down for years. I think COVID helped accelerate that. I think Maryanne touched on a couple of the reasons why. You no longer have to be with your start group, right, in New York or in Chicago or Sao Paulo in one building as coming up and learning your trade. You can be anywhere. And that's just a big difference. So you're competing with consumer packaged goods, you're competing with travel and leisure, we're competing with every other industry for the cool jobs, what we might call the cool jobs. So that's a thing. That's number one. I think that's really, I think the implication of that is that it really forces you as a firm to clearly articulate your value proposition at all levels, entry levels, experienced hires, senior level hires. You better have your value proposition of why your firm, your company is a destination employer. And so I think that may take to the second piece of redefining that value proposition. I think we've been really good on being productive in the last 18 months or since shutdown. We're very productive. We're very efficient as a workforce. I'm not sure we're dialed into performance, where career coaching and mentorship and those interpersonal connections that happen in person, often in person, I think that's a work in progress. I think everyone can get better on the performance side of talent.
First is, how do you create a metric about how efficient people are? I mean, in financial services, it's a little easier because there's a P&L, right? But a lot of remote services, it's very, like a lawyer, you write 50 million more briefs or something. It's hard to, what is the, I mean, this is a big question in economics. How do you measure productivity in services?
And so
that's
for
our
us,
experience at the chamber, but it's hard to show it. It's just me saying it pretty much,
Yeah, I
Sure.
think what Grayson's saying is that we're probably an industry. I mean, we're obviously, IT execution. Maryanne is a client of ours. Grayson's talking about measurable billable hours, but there are, if we don't deliver for Maryanne and we're not consistent in that execution based on pre-agreed milestones, it's going to become fairly obvious, John. That is a measurement in itself of productivity and success and execution. So, again, you're right. It's different. Even internally, I can look at it and be measured against business development, revenue, profitability, right? So I think there are markers. I think it's a case of, people refocusing on what are they and how do you use those and benchmark, properly, and it not just be about, how it used to be, how many hours people are in an office, right? For me, this is all about how, productivity is linked to results. It's not linked to how many hours you're sitting on Zoom every day or sitting in the office doing FaceTime. So I just think, it's less of a challenge. I just think these things have become more obvious, and therefore we're measuring them a little bit more closely.
Very good. Let me turn to Maryanne. Maryanne, technology and financial services have traditionally been dominated by men. As a female founder, what are you doing to bridge the gender gap?
So it's a statistic that I deal with on many levels. And you see statistics where the folks that are applying to colleges and universities in Boston College has 75% of their applicants are female. And then graduation happens, and the day people go into their workforce, the statistics change drastically. We hire, as I mentioned, happy, smart people that get shit done. And we have slightly more women in our company than men. And as you know, there's a lot of things about women and their emotional, tendencies, but actually I find that sometimes the men are more emotional about things than the women. So it's really important, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things. It's really critical for women to understand what they're doing and making sure that they know every little detail in order to move forward. So I had a situation happen to me recently where I was in a meeting with a bank, and they asked me, as the CEO, do you understand, it was a specific item about our blockchain protocol. And I just kind of laughed. The bubble in my head made me laugh because I said, actually, I'm the person in the company that knows the most about blockchain. I'm an engineer, and before I studied finance and law, I studied engineering, and I love to tinker with things. And so I've taken 2 scaling blockchain classes at Stanford, and I really understand this stuff better than anybody else in the company. So it's critical for women to go and apply for these types of positions and learn about it. I think that technology and studying and being able to code is a great equalizer, and that just will lead to, long-term financial stability. And I am very comfortable in a room with men and women, and I'm used to being the only female in the room, and that's okay. And making sure that we articulate and communicate well is also a key component, so that we can assure that we are managing projects correctly. So it's very important for women in particular to understand the underlying technology. I'm a big believer that everybody should know how to use Python, and not only the actual technical tools, but also each and every employee needs to understand how to use basic types of tools and platforms. So it used to be Microsoft Excel, and we still use that. People that are wizards at Excel can have great careers just by knowing those. But in today's job market, it's important to have well-rounded individuals come through that we hire. So those key considerations to make sure that you are up and running quickly, and we don't have to spend 3 weeks learning how to use the typical tools and platforms, and your basic toolkit is really a key critical component of what we do.
So how can young people ensure they're getting the same level of mentorship early in their career, if right now, especially in financial services, you are working remotely?
I think it's with most things in life, it's kind of the two-way street, right, or dual responsibility. Because the definition of mentorship means at least two people, right? A mentor, a mentee. And so I think, number one, first piece of encouragement, and Maryanne and Matt are going to be maybe better at this, but my first piece of encouragement to folks coming up in their careers is to really focus on, building foundational functional skill and experience, and a little less on the title, right, or the level. Look, it's all important. It's just that those titles and levels aren't magically anointed. When you achieve those titles and levels, it's because you've demonstrated excellence in a functional or technical or operational way, and you've built skills. You've built skills and experiences, which leads to knowledge. And so that's kind of number one, is just make sure you're aligned on what's important to you and kind of why those things are important. And then the second piece is be curious, right? Be curious about the program. If your firm or company doesn't have a formal mentorship program, maybe volunteer to start one, right? Or think about one. There's a reason they hire you. You're a smart human, and you can do great things. So if it doesn't exist, then lean in and maybe help start something. If it does exist, there will probably be some structures and some information that you can soak up and see what it looks like. How do you best fit into that program? And you can begin getting some information on strong mentors within your organization. We don't have the same resources as global, hundreds of thousands of employees, those types of companies, Matt, Maryanne. I think we're in similar situations where, we have to be real. And we really think about the approaches on two prongs. So when we say acquisition, talent acquisition, right? Candidate search, candidate communication, candidate acceptance is similar, but different from employee retention. Attraction and retention are related, but they are different, and we treat them differently. So our commitment is ensuring that the employee experience for Summus, now Summus is a SIA Partners company, the employee experience starts with that very first interaction with talent, or with that human being in the market. We want the best for that man or woman in their professional career. We hope, we think that they'll have a great shot at being the best version of themselves. If they're committed passionate about their work, if they're committed to consulting, those things are the things that we find out during the recruitment process. But then we still have a covenant and a contract, both sides, to live up to in retention. And Matt, that's where some of those, you and Maryanne both said it, that's where it gets to what's most important to our workforce. We might think it's pay or compensation. That's an easy one to roll to. Oh, they just want more money. That's not what the last couple of years has shown. It's shown that they want a career path, right? Our employees want to have a real conversation about opportunity. They want to have a real conversation about engagement. They want their line managers and their leaders to know them as people and what's important to them. And then sometimes that gets tossed around as touchy-feely. And I would share with this group that it is not at all. If you want to lose your employees, don't have those conversations. Don't ask them about their day, right? Don't engage in creative ways and then see what happens. My guess is that they will leave. They will find another employer who is committed to those outcomes and is making the investments to see the results they need.
I'm going to say that we have gained efficiency, and our partnership with CPQi is so critical. I started thinking about what we're doing in 2017, started the company in 2018. I'm so excited because this week we're going to be done with our core development, and I can't thank you enough because you brought this all the way over the finish line, and it's really the individuals and the way that we approach things. So I think that there's this mindset of how you handle a team and what you think about, and also the emotional level. So when we first went into lockdown in 2020 in March, I very much took a step back. I read just a ton of literature. How do I make sure that people's emotional well-being is intact? We've had some people on our team, the fixed income people are usually very, the glass is very empty, very half empty. This by nature of being fixed income folks. And so we had some people that were really, extremists. We've had some folks that have been sick, have had family members that have been very ill. And so it's really important that we look people on the eye on Zoom, and that we do turn on our cameras. We make sure that we emotionally look at people's well-being in addition to making sure that they're efficient. So I think it's that there's that emotional, the EQ part of it. I really had to dial that way up and leading a company to ensure that we're doing things correctly. But it's very important for me to make sure that I know everybody's, what their lifestyle is, making sure I know the dogs' names and their family names. John, sometimes it's a good thing to kind of relieve your stress to pet the dog. So I'm going to encourage that you keep your dog close by. Just for like the overall like being of a person, I think is really important to understand through the camera.
Yeah, I think so, John. I'll do a quick bolt on. In the spirit of time, my hope is that we can all take the best of the experiences, since, March 2020, February, March 2020, whatever the date was, it doesn't matter. It was different for some, but we've been all in this together, that we can take the positive experiences, the high collaboration that has happened largely across the board, with our clients, with our partners, with our teammates. I think all that's good. I don't know anyone who believes it's a great idea to now run to an office building in some downtown suburb, doesn't matter the location, and check in at 8 a.m. local time and check out on Friday, right? Like I'll date myself, but like the Flintstones. A Fred Flintstone checkout. That doesn't make sense to anyone anymore. I think it'll be interesting to see what type of balance, as Matt mentioned and Maryanne touched on, what kind of balance we can get to with in-person, hybrid, right, and remote environments. To me, it's all about passion. I do feel like passion. It's hard to have passion through a screen. Maybe through the movies, right? That can touch heartstrings and it really can trigger emotions. But that's a movie. This is a professional setting. So I think that passion for performance, I think the really hard conversations, you think about hiring and firing and promotions and all the things that are important conversations to an employee and an employer. those are more challenging, not impossible, but just more challenging in a remote environment. So I'm looking forward to the balance, to getting back to some balance, because I do think there's a lot of good that has come from the last period of time here.
Well, thank you all very much. Grayson reminded me that, and this has been a truism forever, is that it's better to invest in retaining people, because it takes so long, especially in this environment, to hire a new person. So 6 to 9 months, he put in the chat to me, but I think it may have been even less, proving longer to a lot of places. So, but anyway, thank you all for an excellent discussion. And thank you all for joining. Again, thank you all for coming, especially to our members. For those who are not, please watch the brief video that follows, and we invite you to join the chamber. In the meantime, stay healthy and in good spirit.